Welcome to the Accidental Business Owner podcast, the show that lifts the lid on what it really takes to grow, scale and successfully exit your business without losing your sanity, soul or savings. Real stories, raw lessons, proven strategies. Let's dive into this week's episode. Hello. Welcome to the Accidentally Successful Business Owner podcast. I'm Jay Allen, your host, and as you can see, I'm joined by Matt Bennett today, as we'll be doing a special edition podcast interview. Now, imagine stepping into the CEO role of a long-established company, one with decades of history and a proud reputation, only to subsequently face the toughest challenge potentially of your career to date, steering it through a storm that subsequently ends in collapse. Today, we're joined by former CEO of the DRB Group, a company that went into administration after more than 40 years in operation. Matt's story isn't just about the fall, it's about the lessons learned in the trenches of leadership, the ethical dilemmas faced when hard decisions have to be made, and then subsequently post-collapse, how he's rebuilt his career to be able to help others avoid the same fate. Now, if you've ever wondered what it takes to navigate some of the darkest hours of business, then this is the episode for you. Welcome to the Accidental Business Owner podcast, my dear friend, Mr. Bennett.
Hi. Well, that's quite an intro. Thank you. I like that.
My pleasure. Matt, just to be able to set the scene for people before we actually get into the nuts and bolts, can you give us a bit of a potted career history that led you to being invited to become the CEO? Who was Matt before DRB?
Before DRB, if we get, I've had all sorts of careers. I was never great at school. I was not an academic at all. I think when I left boarding school when I was at the end of fifth year at 16, I think they were very, very pleased to see me go. I ran out of there and they waved me out. And then
lock the doors.
Oh, yeah, completely. Yeah. It is still there. I drive past occasionally. It's still in Ripon, but I don't think anybody was upset to see me leave there. And then I went to a local college in Beckelly where I really struggled to transition from the sort of militarian discipline of a boarding school into just do whatever you like when you like. And, oh, by the way, we don't speak English here, so good luck picking up Welsh when you can't speak a word of it. So yeah, I went off the rails a bit. Is probably the honest answer. Found myself down in Southampton, enrolled on a course at uni, and again that just lack of structure just wasn't for me. So I went out and got a job. I started as a part-time salesperson in Currys, and 5 years later, I've done a bit of project work. I've been a store manager and ended up running the fourth largest store in the company, which was pretty big and pretty exciting. And actually, this time of year was just hilarious because on Boxing Day we would have a couple of hours in the middle there where we do like 80 grand an hour, which was just absolute carnage. It was brilliant in so many ways, and I had 98 staff. It was 15 million turnover. And bear in mind that's made up of, I suppose the average sale value was probably about 150 quid or 200 quid or something. So yeah, it was pretty intense. And just what a bizarre business really as a group, because it's amazing how many people you bump into really successfully in life who've worked there. Some amazing people go through it, but the culture is just, bear in mind I'm going back, nearly 30 years now, well over 20 years. It's just really toxic. It was everything I didn't want to be. It was the language around how we treated staff. There was no flexibility. If you had someone that was an absolute clown and you had someone that was just absolutely perfect, the pay scale was effectively the same. So there was no way really to do much. It was all very short term. But they're last man standing, so they do a lot well, don't they? I mean, Comet and all the others have gone, and they've continued to thrive. That ethos of what Stanley Carm's built, was kind of permeated into the walls. So a lot went well, but I suppose I had what's probably best described, a bit of an epiphany. And it was 2004. I was driving to work, and I thought, God, what a pointless life! I'm like, whenever I was 26 or whatever, I'm doing 100-hour weeks. I'm full on. I'd done some property development, made a bit of money, I got a nice house, decent car, all of that. But I've no friends, no girlfriend, no nothing really, because I was just working, work. And I thought, well, I need a change of direction. And it shows how Currys values you, because I phoned up the territory manager at the time, who weirdly I'd helped place, because I did some project work for a territory manager, and he'd been, part of bringing him in. And I said, look, I just need a couple of days to get my head straight and figure out what it is I want to do. I said, I've not had a day off for about 3 weeks. I'm not going to be at the manager's meeting until I work out where I'm at. And he said, you either tell me what it is now, or I'll see you at the manager's meeting. And I was going to sort of go into, well, actually, I don't really want to do it over the phone with you. I want to see you face to face. I've had a bit of a, I don't want to. And I suppose I was looking for a bit of a phased withdrawal while I considered my options. But I thought, do you know what? If that's how they value me at this stage, after everything I've given, I'm out. Bear in mind we didn't get overtime, so you're on your salary. So if you're doing over 39 hours, it's on you as a manager. So I threw my hat in. I literally just handed my resignation to my deputy the next day. I got all my affairs in order, walked out, and the only person that contacted me, well, there was two. There was one who was an ex-territory manager who'd moved on to another company. He phoned me up, and an ex-manager who was a territory manager. He phoned me up and said, "Are you sure it's what you want to do?" And I said, "Yeah, I've said enough." So being the idealistic idiot that I am, I thought, do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go off to Africa, right? And I'm going to put back into society. I'm going to go and work for a charity. And I phoned them all, and they're like, "Well, oh, great. What do you do?" "Oh, I'm really good at commercial. I'm a really good salesman. I can manage a team. I'm good at motivation." "Great. Have you got an HGV license?" "No." "Can you dig an artesian well?" "No." "Are you an engineer?" "No." "Then send us a check and go and find another hobby." Understandably, right there. They're like, "Yeah, no, we don't need any of that. Like, we're not. Yeah, that's like of no use at all." I even looked. I was like, "Oh, I'll go and be a policeman in Iraq," and they're like, "No, we need policemen to go and work in Iraq, not some idiot that's worked in a shop to go and that's another problem to train. No, we don't want that." So I was a bit like, "Oh God, what am I going to do?" I'd never really been anywhere like traveling or anything. Never seen the world. Always really worked. So I ended up weirdly just finding this like magazine article for Africa Conservation Experience. And long story short, I did 6 months out in South Africa, trained as a game ranger, and worked on a game capture team, which was just awesome. Flew back at the back end of 2004, and was just like really depressed. I was like, oh my God, everyone's still doing the same things in the same way. Got this amazing taste of the world, but I don't want to just, I've been offered a job out there. I didn't want to just take it. I thought, what else is there in the world? So on a very, very drunken New Year's Eve, I took my best mate into driving around the world with me. So in 2005, we haven't got time to go through it all, but I built a Land Rover that died, bought a Toyota, built that, and off we went. So we left, and we drove across the Sahara and all through Asia and all that, and then all over Australia. And met a girl in Egypt, a British woman who was working out there in an international school, got married, lived out in Egypt for a couple of years, worked as a dive guide. But it wasn't enough. Yeah, I just missed that like cut and thrust, the challenge of leadership and all of that, and leading diving groups and stuff. It was it was great for a bit. It was nice to see the world and stuff, but I was kind of craving more corporate. I'd always had a hand in the family business. Dad and I have what's best described in corporate terms as dynamic tension. In the same way that dry ice and the face of the sun have dynamic tension, we are very much polar opposite characters. But we, there was always a dialogue. So I moved back, bought a place in Scotland. Really, really enjoyed that. But the outdoor access code finished me there. Moved down to Devon, and that's probably where I really settled. Got a lovely little hill farm in Devon. Things were going great. I got more and more involved in the business, and now we're probably at like 2012, and my dad says to me, "Look, we really need to look at selling the business. I've had enough. I want out. Too big, too messy, too much." And I said, "Yeah, okay. We can look at that. I'll give you a hand." We ended up using Bazaars. I've got a friend there who his mum was a teacher at Manor Junior School, so they came in, and very quickly it turned out that, and a direct quote from my dad is, "All that shite you talk," had some a grain of truth in it. There was no meaningful MI. There was no contracts in place. There was no systems, no processes. The standing joke was always we were one bad winter away from getting control of payroll, because everybody was over 70, and there was just no succession plan. There was a couple of people in there that had some opportunity, but a lot of them were chased out. There was a very toxic culture. It was all built around, basically the business was like a host with a lot of parasites on it. People were just about what can they grab and get, how can they maximize, how can I scam it all, where I say I've got a haircut, I go home, I come back, I get the hours call out, I get the I get that added on, and we have a flat rate of £50 an hour. So there was no sophistication to the pricing, no understanding of quotations. Everybody in the business could raise a PO.
Wow.
Right? Digital transformation? Nope. We brought in an ERP, killed it, over customized it. Nobody knew what to do with it. Switched the old one off. So there was just nothing. It was literally up the walls. So I said, right, well, what do we do? So we spoke to Mazars about an interim. Said, look, let's get a specialist turnaround interim MD in. We'll work together. And at that time, I was the vice chair. Dad was the chair. He kind of stepped out of the business. There was that power vacuum. So in came interim MD. And he was the only candidate, really, that probably could have done the job in a lot of ways, because he was a very detail-focused, really, really structured, unemotional man, which was exactly what we needed to work with my dad. Because the danger is, if you get two big bulls in a room, all you're going to get is like clash. So off we go, and straight away there's some big decisions being made. Rightly, senior team have got to go. And I'm not going to disparage these guys, because they've done a lot and they were very, very loyal. But the problem was, these guys have been brought in sort of 1976 when the business started, and it was like 5 of them, 6 of them, 8 of them, 10 of them, that sort of, growth. And then all of a sudden you're talking 200 people, 6.5 acre site, you're turning over sort of 12, 15 million, and you're working in nuclear, oil and gas, rail, safety critical stuff. Nobody with any real project management training. It was absolutely out of control. And we had to, wrestle that into some sort of semblance of, nobody monitored scrap. How much is scrap? What is scrap? Where is that? So my dad didn't want to deal with that. He didn't want to put in, which is, he put a lot of money in at the end, just to try and, give us a bit of a bridge there, and then he wanted out. And stuff. I can't blame him for that. I don't blame him at all. Out he went, and I was a big boy. I thought I knew what I was taking on. I didn't. I was very confident that I couldn't do it, so I was very, very keen to bring people in. And my first week in charge was with like 3 directors from GRG, Global Restructuring Group, from RBS. I'd read the Tomlinson report. Anybody knows what that is? Basically, they as a division, they were in a lot of trouble for taking asset-rich businesses in engineering specifically, handing them over to KPMG, asset stripping them and shutting them down. And this, guess what my first meeting they wanted me to have was with KPMG. So I just said to them, look, you're a lot smarter than me. If you're going to take the business off me, you might as well just do it today, because you'll outmaneuver me, right? I'm new at this, And they said, no, not at all. We're really keen to get away from that reputation. We really believe in the business, and we really believe that you'll do it, because you've got the self-awareness to know that you don't know everything. And we had a plan as such, which was to bring KPMG in, because I'd met with them. I was deliberately an absolute arsehole with the guy that came in, because I needed someone that was going to shut me up and like come in like a sledgehammer and do something different. I just didn't need like a checkbox. All right, there's 3-statement model, and there's this and there's that. We'd had to recruit an FD. We'd had an off-site accountant that tried to do a good job, but the reality was there was nothing. There was no timely MI. What you did get was a big stack of paper like that. He said, "Oh, I've done it for the quarter divided by 3." Right? You're opening drawers and there's just checks coming out of them. We're like, well, what's happening here? What's this? So we had to get control. I mean, just when you look at things like in terms of debtor days, 200, 300 days for some people, like,
wow,
right? Just nothing. Just absolute free for all. It was out of control. So the plan was, it's funny actually, somewhere around here. In fact,
and am I right in thinking that because it had been a cash-rich business, it had got to a point where we'd been able to stumble through for that long that the problem was just getting bigger, but we were covering it up with a bigger plaster?
Yeah, and the other thing was we were the Roman Empire, really, is that we had this great big business that was the biggest and the best. We had the best engineers and all of that for decades. But unfortunately, because we'd grown arrogant and we'd grown lazy and we'd grown, the joke was always, the business was called DRB, it's my dad's initials, and the joke was always dirty robbing bastards. And so, once you then start going from engineer to engineer, having conversations about, we'll take 1,000 of them and we'll fill the storeroom, and can you get this and can you get that? Procurement have come in now from international groups and gone, just in time. Well, that's very much a reversal. We're left holding that. So the business had been built on power transmission. You can't compete now, the likes of Ericsson and Brammer and stuff, because they've got international buying power where they're buying millions. You're being asked to hold stock for multinationals. You've become the minnow in the middle now. So it's a completely different setup. You've got a company that's turning over billions globally that is your customer, the Nestle's, GMIs of the world. And on the other side, you've got suppliers, which are almost as big as that. So nobody cares. You've got no real leverage in there, really. And you've been asked to carry the count. So that was our 2015 plan that I still keep, which reminds me that it wasn't great when I took over. We did a full audit, tried to really get to grips with the scale of the problem, which showed a loss of 1.8 million. Which was savage. We'd had a project that had been taken on sort of the year earlier that we were getting to the tail end of. It was a roughly £250,000 project, and we'd lost £250,000 on it, which was the second time we'd done that over sort of 3 years. So there was just a lot to unravel and get to grips with, and it was really a bit of a skydive moment, really. You got out of the plane, and now it was, well, we are where we are, so we've got it down.
I was going to query you because you mentioned that KPMG were in early after your inauguration, if you like, of taking the reins. At what point did you get to personally when you recognised that in actual fact administration was inevitable? And it was going to be a case of we've now got to be able to, that pivotal point, as opposed to KPMG giving you the initial assurances that, no, we really believe in you, and you get to where you're saying, do you know what, this is bigger than we can overcome.
2019. Okay. We got clever at borrowing money. I'm very good in a corner. I'm very creative, driving across the Sahara. I'm just looking at my wall of broken dreams. I've been climbing in Iraq and Russia and all that. And it's all the same mindset, right? It's how do you achieve the impossible? And it just becomes about effort, really. When you've got that evolutionary pressure that it's right, we either get this much or we're done. In 2015, I got divorced, left the farm, sold that, gave my wife at the time half of everything, separated, moved up here, lived out of hotels and just really got embedded. I exited the incumbent interim because he wasn't very good with people. He wasn't good at the cultural side of things, and brought in a whole new team, and we just went for it. And then 2019,
it was almost like back to being running the fourth biggest couriers business in the country, where you were doing the 100 hours and you were just fully embedded and you just got the team around you and driving forward.
I was probably still at that stage, more sort of chairman-like, in that my role was to kind of try and manage the board. I went down to Pall Mall with the IOD and did the roll of the chair course. I kind of saw that was where I was going to be. I'd set the team up and like get out of the way, but it just wasn't working. I got KPMG back in, and they said to me, "It's got to be you." And I had a very, very good friend at the time who I've got a huge amount of love and respect for, who was my accountant at the time, and she was amazing with me. I mean, I was like, I was trying to fight off my parents, fight off an ex-wife, turn the business around. It was, war on every front, and she absolutely, just was phenomenal with me. And I can remember being in a board meeting, and she was very emotional, and as was actually the guy from KPMG. And he said that you've got to do it yourself. Like, it's got to be you. I got a consultant in there that had come from KPMG, and I'll name him actually because he's a phenomenal guy, a guy called Nick Alexander, who is just unbelievable. I mean, he's just such a talented, gifted consultant. And I don't know if he'd found that title insulting. I don't really know how to describe him, but he's won a load of awards with the IFT, and he's as close to perfection in that type of role as I've ever come across. It's unbelievable. And he said, "Yeah, it's got to be you. You can do it. You've got to do it." I've been told by a few people in the business it's got to be you, but you have that voice behind you where your dad's always telling you, but you don't know what you're doing. You haven't got a clue. You can't do it. But at that point, there was nothing left to lose. We were done. So we went through a pre-pack, and we used Leonard Curtis for a number of reasons. And they were very, very good. And Andy Bailey, that was there, that handled me, did an amazing job, because it's a very odd relationship, I think, between an IP and a family business owner, because it's not like this is not like a group, right? This is not like, oh, we've got 30 companies and one's not doing well, let's lop a limb off, move on. You're kind of all in at this stage. I've got a lot of personal guarantees. I haven't got the asset worth to cover them. And it was terrifying. I can't even tell you how many rebanks I'd done by that stage as well. So we went through the pre-pack, came out of that, exited the finance guy for any number of reasons. The relationship had just broken down, really. So we and I could never get that role right ever. And I look back, I think that was 50% me, 50% them. Just one of those things. So we went through what really was just an unbelievable process, really. Pre-pack administration is, I think it's hard before. You've got to get every supplier signed back on, every customer signed back on. All your accreditations have to be redone. So it's not a simple process in an engineering company like that. And I can remember going out, and I'll name the company because I don't care. I went out to Essity, and there was a woman there who was savage. She eviscerated me. Scum like you probably got a yacht in Monaco, and all. I mean, she unloaded on me. And that's it, right? I mean, we'd made, I think, from memories, I think we'd made about 50% of the staff redundant, which was not easy to do. It was like, you're a military man, aren't you? I've never served, but it was like every day was like the first 15 minutes of Saving Private Ryan. There was just no like bit where you could just have like 10 minutes to say. It was just another. And then as we probably just started to rebuild, and we'd done all the digital transformation, we'd got some controls in place, Epicor was sort of working, and we'd kind of revitalized what we were. We got some marketing resource, all of that. We kind of, moving in the right direction. But what was really hard, Brexit was just savage for us. I mean, it was savage. Companies like Unilever, for the first time in 27 years, no project spend, nothing. Everyone just hit the hard stop because nobody knew what anything was and how it was going to work and what they were going to do. So that was really tough. And that was really starting to bite. Then COVID, everybody else managed to get all the bounce back loans. We've been through a pre-pack and get penny. So we're still in a situation. I mean, I was in a situation for probably 3 weeks where I managed the business from a banking app because we couldn't get a bank account. And we're not talking, it's not like a one-man consultancy like I'm now. You're talking, you've still got like 90 staff and you're turning, you're spending $8,000 a day on pro formas. And so that, payments would do it all on a list, and then I'd go, and I'd be on the app at night. I mean, just, everything. You're loading machine, literally down there trying to do the workflow. Then you're out to every customer trying to win the projects, trying to get all that. You're working on the quotations, you're working on HR, you're across everything. And we were starting to fly, actually, because weirdly, COVID, we were mission critical to so much stuff, food sector, dried food, cereals, all that type of stuff went ballistic. So we got stuck in on that. We had a massive cereal project on at the time. So we were really lucky with that. That was really fortuitous timing. And then we started to grow and we were making profit and things were getting better. We won a massive project. So we invested in a load of machinery. And for the first time in 40 odd years, they cancelled. So we'd ordered the machinery, they cancelled the project, they wanted a load of the money back, and that big job wasn't going to happen. So we were a bit stuck. So there wasn't a lot we could do. So we ploughed through. We got the new machinery running. And then we went on and we bought more new machinery, and things were being installed and everything was carnage. We've got a new finance team. I'm not trying to dig up fights that need to be left alone, but there was a level of chaos brought in there that was a big catalyst towards the end. The FD walked, the incumbent FD at that time walked during an audit with our new bank. There was £1 million worth of invoicing that they weren't happy with, that I couldn't explain because I didn't know what anything was, because I'd never touched invoicing. And I remember getting called in. It was the night before my birthday, so it would have been December 2022. And things were bad again, right? It was like there was a lot on it, and we were just crazy busy, but the profit wasn't there. The bank called me in on the night before the birthday, and I went in on my birthday, and they eviscerated me, rightly. I felt really bad because the guy who brought me in had been at a previous bank with us, and I felt like I'd let him down as well, and everybody, and we had to try and put the wheels back on. But I wasn't well enough. I'd worked through a load of suspected heart attacks. I wasn't healthy. I wasn't in a good way. It turns out I've had a heart defect since birth, and a couple of ultra marathons and a lot of high altitude mountaineering had never exposed it, but the stress, it was just unbelievable. It's called a myocardial bridge, so the main artery runs through the heart, and it just gripped it. And it was awful. The pain was unbelievable. I couldn't breathe. I was really unwell. I just found that there wasn't enough for me to go through. My MD had quit on me, who, I thought would never happen. He'd come up from an apprentice there, and I thought he'd always be with me. He'd gone and found another job and handed his notice in. He asked to come back, but I think once you've done that,
Matt, I'm just going to interject a little, because there's a couple of things that you've said in the last 10 minutes or so that I just want us to be able to cut and dive back into, because they've been really intriguing to me, particularly with regards to a few interviews that we've done along the way, that there's almost a regular pattern happening here. I just want to be able to go back and dive back into it, please. Yeah. One of them was with regards to this perception that when it all gets terrible and bad, that we can phoenix and launch something else and just move everything across and start again. And you identified there, but almost brushed over it, about the severity of a pre-pack and the amount of things that have to be done to sufficiently be able to continue trading, as opposed to actually just close at that time. And I think certainly at a point, 2022, 23, 24, we've seen a huge rise in the amount of businesses that were very devious with regards to their claiming of furlough and bounce back loans and the likes, and then subsequently thought, well, it's all right, I'll phoenix, I'll start again and it'll all be fine. without any real understanding with regards to the severity of a pre-pack and what you end up having to go through in order to be able to continue trading.
Are you a Marvel guy? Do you watch Marvel movies at all?
Yeah.
Right. You remember the I can't. There's that many. I can't remember the name. But the one with the gauntlet thing, where Doctor Strange looks into the future and he says there's 400 million times this happens and 3 times it works, or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
That's what a pre-pack is. Is that it's a very, very useful tool in an insolvency practitioner's arsenal, and I think there's a perception that it's just like, we've been lazy, we've been whatever, right? And it just is not that, right? It's the more complicated your business, the more complex that process is, because it's the difference between known unknowns and unknown unknowns, and there are many known unknowns that will kill it, and there are.
And you're almost encouraged to go into it as a way of being able to try and salvage and overcome, whilst actually not knowing the likely outcome. It's just a case of, well, you're currently facing a desperate dark time. Here's an alternative path that might be better for you, but we don't know how many obstacles or what they're going to be, and you might never get through the end of it anyway. Yeah.
And you are literally in the realms of only perfection will suffice, because even in
the scrutiny that you go through to be able to be reaccredited.
Even the piece before. So in terms of the moratoriums that you have to get, you can't go to your own solicitor. You have to go to a solicitor doesn't know you. You have to get even those. There's just the level of precision that's required. You need a phenomenal IP. You need to do what you're told, when you're told, how you're told, and you need to be fast, and you need to be accurate. And that's always a challenge, right? And you need a war chest. So there's even in the process coming up to it, there's a massive amount of complexity to get it right. And we did. In credit to us, we all as a team. There's just no way I would have got through without my MD at the time, or my accountant. I can't say how grateful I am to both of them. Adam and Diane really were, and Ali, who was, I couldn't even tell you how much I respect that woman. And to a lesser degree, my partner, because she, and I hate saying nice things about her, but she had a lot of weight, because at home I was either not here or I was just a raging Hulk, because I was the pressure.
Sure. Now, before we started recording, you were kind enough to be able to say you're an open book, and we can converse about pretty much anything stuff. As part of the research I've been doing ready for this interview, I uncovered the fact that there was a tribunal after the business went under, talking and highlighting some failures around the redundancy process. I know through meeting you through the IOD that we both hold ethics as an incredibly high standard, both personally and professionally. I wonder if you can just look back in reflection and talk to me through that ethical dilemma with regards to being led through a process, particularly by other people that have said, right, we've now got to do this, and this, which subsequently came back and bit the business, and predominantly, you was the helm of that on the ass with regards to the redundancy process and things that we perhaps in reflect could have done differently.
The honest answer is we couldn't have done anything differently, because there was nowhere to go. A
rock and a hard place.
There was a nothing. There was a void and a void. There was just no. By that stage, I'd gone out. We tried to sell the business in a sort of crisis. We've been on critical payments, which unravelled us, because by the time, the way our business worked was, yes, it was engineering, it was all of that, but our kind of unofficial life, tagline was, we get shit done. The reason people used us is they're ringing us because we're fast. Either something's gone horribly wrong and we need to pick up the pieces quickly, or we're working around production downtime and everyone else has said either this is impossible or it's going to take a year. And we said, okay. It's a bit like that tagline from the Royal Engineers. What was it? If it's possible, we'll do it now. If it's impossible, we need a day. And that really was kind of how we were. And so we were reliant on lots of weird stuff. So like you might have a situation where you've got to spend 600 quid on some glue because you've got to get it in a taxi down from wherever and whatever, you know, weird stuff like that, because that's the bit that's holding the project up. Or there's a tiny O-ring, you know, people don't care what it costs because it's holding up a production facility that might be losing £100,000 an hour, a day, a week, you know, whatever it is. So trying to get someone to understand that on the end of a phone from from an insolvency practitioner's consultant, they can't get that. And I was saying, just come and get here. Come and base yourself in the factory. Come and I will walk you through and say, I need one of these to go with that goes in that thing there. Customers on the phone, we can invoice it this afternoon. Can we do it? But by the time they've agreed and they've spoken to the bank, you've missed the window. And now the supply chain think we're going bust. And just like a run on the bank, if enough people think you're going bust, you go bust.
Yeah, and that's what I want us to tie back into and come back to where you got to with regards to the downside with many businesses that were impacting the 2008 crash, 2012, 2013 financial challenges post-Brexit, and then Brexit kicked in and all of the challenges that have, and then COVID obviously and the likes. But how, rather than looking at things in context, decision makers, banks, suppliers, we're taking a measure and some of it a finger in the air and just a hope, which way's the wind blowing, to determine thinking and judgment, as opposed to actually looking at the actuals and the individuals involved. And rather than saying, can Matt and as DRB got the capacity and the capability, have they got the evidence to support 30, 40 years of doing this? Are we going to lend in relations to them, or are we going to utilize this blanket cover of fear and uncertainty that, well, they've gone under and they've gone under, so we don't want to be left with our pants down, we'll just close everything down? And some of that influential thinking from other things that were happening in the local community, or with the banks, determination of what they're what's considered a priority right now, that then enforced decisions to be made that in actual fact in reality were never pertinent to you or to your business.
I mean, the thing I always want to lead with, it was 100% my fault, and you have to own that, right? If you're 100% shareholder and you're the chief exec and you're operationally in charge of the business, and the business fails while you're in charge, it's on your head. And if I'd have known me 10 years ago, it wouldn't have ended in the way that it did. But I did my best, and it wasn't good enough. And that is the top and bottom of it. Now, at that stage, we were starting to win regular projects, and they were big, and there was a lot of money coming in. But we didn't even have an overdraft. We had like a 15 grand credit card, and the problem you've got is, yeah, I mean that's what I mean. You can't. I mean, when the business I took over had a £500,000 overdraft, and we had £300,000 worth of credit cards. Right now, I've gone to 15 grand on a credit card, right? Which, bear in mind, I was PGing, and yeah, I had to cover that at the end, as well as other stuff. But and no overdraft. I like I say, I did weeks without even a bank account. I had to get a Starling app. There's and the supply chain. What they don't understand is that, and I get it from their point of view, right? You can't criticize them, but they're saying to you, well, you can have 20 grand. And you're like, well, that's not a credit limit. I'll do that in a day. And they're like, all right, well, we'll give you the 20 grand, but we'll do it over 40 days. No, it's not. I need bigger pound notes, not longer time, because I'm running that up in a day. So the actual spinning plates of, we've got this coming in here, that going out there, this coming in here. And if the government want to do one thing, Nestle, for example, right? We get an email, some generic email from somebody in Switzerland. Congratulations, you've done over 1 million with Nestle. You're now on 120 days. How do I fund that? I quoted for a project at Mondelez, and again, they're talking 120 days. And I said, can't do it. Because the most you'll get, if you absolutely have an amazing relationship with an invoice financer, which, bear in mind, we had invoice financing that costs $250,000 a year. If you want ISO 9000 in our business, over $100,000 a year. Our insurance, over $250,000 a year. Our payroll, including PAY, rough number, about $500,000 a month. VAT, $250,000 a quarter. Rent, $300,000 a year. You know, these are not small numbers. Yeah.
So offering you 20 grand doesn't make any sense.
So what am I going to do with that? You know, it's gone in a day, and we're $8,000 a day in pro forma.
It's covering the coffee bill.
100%. You're not. Your cash flow bridge is never right, because you're always scrabbling to get the money in any sort of sense before it's going out. And actually, when you look at the total, we're not too bad, but we need something to get us from here to there.
Yeah, the burn rate. Yeah.
And no one's interested in the conversation. So there's no time to do anything strategic. You know, you can't take an arm. You know, people say, oh, well, you should have had a helicopter view. You should have. You know, I'm in a pair of jeans, a pair of steel toe caps, and a t-shirt most day. And my day will start at, you know, sort of 6, 7 in the morning, and it won't finish till, I mean, it's not unusual for the phone to have still been ringing 10:30, 11 at night, you know, and you're doing your best, you know, to bridge. I'm trying to charm the arse out of the Secretary of State for Wales to give me some help in the afternoon. You know, I'm in a board meeting with the bank or whatever, and then the next day, you know, I'm getting effed and jeffed out by the fabbies because we haven't got enough stainless. And that's 4 people.
Sure.
You know, that's not one guy that can, you know, there's a lot of flex in there. And
Matt, I'm conscious that we've gone into this rabbit hole of what happened.
Yeah,
I'm really keen to be able to get you out the other end of it. I was really fortunate enough in the episode 65, maybe 67 or something, of the podcast to interview Gerald Ratner and talk about the Ratner circumstance.
Yeah.
He said, you know, it took him 8 years to be able to get out of bed after everything went under. Help me to understand as to the resilience that you've found to be able to reinvent yourself, that once DRB are gone, what happens to Matt then, and how has he been able to morph into who he is now?
So let me just tell you how it went. So the last day was the day last day of January 2023, and it was the day before payroll, and I let all the staff go without pay, bar about I think it was 14 staff we kept to wind down the order book. I didn't have any say in that. I didn't have any choice in that. That wasn't a decision. That was just what I was told to do, and that's what I did. That's what I executed, because we had no money. There was nothing. Bank wouldn't pay the wages because the money wasn't there, and that was the end of that. So we wound everything down, and on the 16th of February, everybody went. So there was just me and another that I was, managing to just give a bit of cash to try and help me, because there were millions of pounds worth of machines to get rid of. There was a 6.5 acre site that needed to be sold, because my dad's the landlord. So that, you know, fun times. You can imagine what the relationship was there. Rightly so, because I'd screwed his retirement. And there was a lot of PGs, and there was some very, very awful conversations with solicitors, and the liquidator published a home address to all of the trade creditors and all of the staff. And I had, it took me nearly a year to get it all gone. You know, I mean, at one stage, I think there was about 40 articulated lorries around the estate, gantry cranes, telehandlers, and me and another managing that, you know, because everything had to go, and it had to go quick. Site got sold. The site got taken control of by you'll be so careful what you're saying, haven't you? Let's just say a number of people in caravans took control of the site and didn't want to leave, and so I had to walk in there the morning of the next day and just ask them to leave. And I was just dead honest. I said, look, you know, I need you to go. We've got a buyer, and you're gonna cost me that. Please, can you go? And to be fair to them, they did. But there was a lot of damage, and there was a lot of stuff to sort out, which we could have done without. But there we go. Then it was sold, and I suddenly woke up one morning and thought, right, what? You know, I just didn't know. I didn't know how to process it. I suppose it's a bit like, you know, there'll be people in the forces that will be in combat, and they'll fly back, and they don't fly out again, and they're like, okay, well, like Friday Friday I was a Marine or the SAS or whatever, and now Monday morning what am I? You know, or an athlete. You know, one day I'm a Premier League footballer, and then Monday morning, what am I? And I've got no
It's
money.
interesting. I was talking to somebody at the weekend who is a current drone pilot, and he was saying that he goes to work and he kisses his wife, and the kids go to school, and he goes to work and he gets into this little pod, and is a drone pilot watching a screen that's, you know, either ordnance or reconnaissance or dropping ordnance on sites. And then after 8 or 9 hours in a drone, in a war zone, comes back out the pod, drives his car home and picks his kid up on the way from school. And it was a case of the psychology between one and the other. And it must have been exactly the same, that you've been so embroiled in doing and doing and doing that in actual fact, when it was all over, it was a case of, well, who is Matt and what do I do now with all of this spare time?
And I don't think the human brain is designed to cope with that level of loss of status and purpose. And when you've fed everything, you know, marriage, sanity, you know, your kids' early years, everything to something, and then it's gone, you just, it's too big a change too quick, and there's no way to cope with it. I ended up in a very bad way, and the abridged version, drank far too much, tried to take my own life, couldn't even get that right. I was in a really very dark place. I was just completely lost. So I ended up in an anti-suicide charity with I called the Martin Gallia Project, who are just amazing. And there was a little tiny Scouse woman in there called Darren, who quite literally saved my life. And she said to me, she spoke to me in a way that no professional ever has before, because she'd lived through it. And I think that was sort of a bit of a light bulb moment for me. I was like, well, I know what I want to do now. Is I've had a level of experience that probably puts me in a Venn diagram of you know, probably under 5% of chief execs have experienced what I have. In
Easily
terms
under 5%.
You know, you talk to a really high level FD, and they might have done a rebank, and you're like, done about 4. You know, under distress. You know, well, I've got trading losses, and you know, whilst I was doing operations, and. So you've had this like amazing baptism of fire. So what do you want to do with that experience, right? What do you do with it? And so for me, it was about stop other people ending up where I did. So I thought, well, what do I need to do that? So I'd got a chip on my shoulder about no education. So I enrolled with the University of East London. I'm just looking, I've got my wall here, which is a couple of the biggest peaks I've done. Trucker drove around the world, and the thing I'm most proud of is me graduating with my MBA, because I'm not an academic. I've got my certificate there. I've got a distinction. I've got my MBA. I went to my Prince 2 Agile, and I signed up to Corporate Finance Institute. So I realised if I don't do something vastly different, I'm just going to repeat the same mistakes. And the MBA was the greatest thing I could have done, because it was so cathartic. It was all online, so I could pick the kids up, drop the kids off. You know, my partner is amazing. You know, she's gone and got herself a phenomenal career, and she's an incredibly accomplished woman, and has managed me. I would not have got through it without her. Like, not even a chance. And so my life became like really, really focused for once, which was really narrow. Clean the house, pick up the kids, drop the kids off, masters in the middle. And the way the units run, these are brilliant, right? One is a reflective assignment, one is an academic analysis. So go and look what you cocked up, how you did it wrong, why you did it wrong, and then go and write the gold standard for how you fix it. So you're forced to look at this thing, the worst moment of your life, you're forced to come back to it all with an academic lens on, and get into the detail and test it and understand it. And that for me was brilliant, because you know, the clarity that you have, you're like, oh my God, how did I do that? You know, and you really understand what you didn't know, and having that framework around it. And, you know, look, it sounds a bit, you know, glib or whatever, but I do have a mission in life now, right? Which is, I just want to make sure that no other business ends up where I did. And you can't save them all. So I'm not saying I could save every business early enough from liquidation, because you can't. but what I can save is the owner going through it on their own.
Yeah.
So even, you know, and any SME could benefit from what I know, because when you go through a pre-pack, single biggest thing that's important, single biggest thing that an insolvency practitioner doesn't look at, doesn't know, wouldn't know how to do. Who's in charge and how are they? It's all great getting all the detail right? But if the person in charge, if he or she, if they've lost their head, who's looking at that? Who's helping them? Who's sat by them saying, right, here's what we're going to do, and here's why we're going to do it, and I'll take this bit, you take that bit. And, you know, that level of support, that wraparound doesn't exist. If you don't come out of the pre-pack a vastly different business to going in, you know, pretty obvious where you're going to end up.
Yeah,
pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely so. Absolutely so. And it's about that willingness to be able to take the lens, the hard lessons, to say, you know, at what point do I need to, at what point did I make the catastrophic mistake or allow the catastrophic mistake to happen that subsequently led to X? And what do I need to do differently that I can learn from this and make it an experience that I can benefit from, in order that I can go on to become bigger, better, bolder, faster, more furious in the future? And if you look at some of the most incredibly wealthy people, not just in the UK or US or Dubai, but globally, and look at their past failings, in actual fact, the richest people on the planet average 2 pre-packs in their career, on the premise that, okay, this is where I got to. This is how far I could push the needle before it broke. This is the lesson I've learned from it. Now I can go off and do it more significantly and successfully again. And it might be that I end up losing a second time round. There was a study done in '96 whilst I was doing my second degree. If the UK became a socialist society, what would that look like in 5, 10, 20 years' time? And in '96, they established that if we became a socialist and we divided all wealth and all debt equally, that every adult in the UK would be given £18,009. We were a cash-rich country that if we divided it all up, we'd all have £18,009. And they concluded that within 24 months, the current rich will be rich again and the current poor will be poor again, because nobody had learned the lesson about how to be able to generate wealth, or the errors that they'd made to lead them into the debt in the first place. So I guess my question, Matt, you've been really kind to be able to share a warts and all around who you are and what you've been through and what it's led you to be able to do. 2 quick questions, if I may, to conclude. If you could go back, but only change one thing, at what period of time would you go back to, and what's the one thing that you would have done differently?
I would probably go back to probably 2015, and I would have cut deeper. I think if we'd have done the pre-pack in 2015, and I think we'd have. It's a bit like leishmaniasis, right? You get flesh-eating virus in your big toe, and people think, oh, I don't want to lose my foot, so I'll just take a bit of the toe, and then they go, oh, sorry, we've been too long, I've got to take the foot. Well, I don't want to lose all the foot, take a bit of the foot. But actually, the right thing to do is take the leg off at the hip. It's going to hurt. It's going to be awful, but you're going to get it. And that's what we did wrong. Is we tried to keep the whole beast going, and that was just never going to be sustainable. There was just too many divisions that were completely unprofitable. We were losing an absolute fortune. We didn't know what we were losing. That's really easy to say in hindsight.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if we're talking Harry Potter stuff, then I'd have me, because me now, or with that experience 10 years ago, I would have looked at that and the network that I've got and the people that I could have brought in. I'm not saying it'd be easy, but it wouldn't be unmanageable. We could have done that really well, really quick. Operationally, I know what I need. Financially, I know what I need. I mean, one of the big things SMEs get wrong all the time, the mistake I made, you pay more and more and more for an FD. You don't need an FD. You need an FPAP. Nobody knows what that is. Right? And I don't know why that's not out there, right? Because what you need is an absolute Excel ninja who's a phenomenal data analyst. And then you need to know, how do we build the data? Go and meet the lads on the shop floor, make sure that's right, get all the data, but right, now we're making real decisions on real data. Because how many times you sit there and you're going, oh, we're going to cut this, and we're going to get rid of that, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And you're building on sand because the data's just completely toxic. It's not accurate.
And people will be seeing the fact that I'm grinning from ear to ear, because if there's one thing that I've been talking about through 3 seasons of this podcast, it's the importance of data-driven decisions. And it's not about analysis paralysis. It's not about collecting information for the sake of it and to be able to fill out a spreadsheet. First of all, it's about understanding as to what's the goal, what are we trying to achieve, and what data are we collecting to support the decisions that we make in order to be able to get there.
If you said to me, right, Matt, I'm going to give you £1 billion to invest in the stock market, right? You can ask anybody anything. You get 3 analysts. Who do you want? I would have Michael Burry, I'd have Ray Dalio, and I'd have Simon Sinek, right? Because you've got everything there, haven't you? Michael Burry does not give a shit about who's in charge. He doesn't want to meet them. He doesn't want to know. He doesn't care, right? He's unapologetically, massively, neurodiverse, and he just goes straight into the detail of the numbers, right? Perfect. You've got that. Then you've got Ray Dalio, who looks at the macro. No one in the world knows better what the global trends are going to do that are going to tell you where it's going to go. Simon Sinek, meet the team, tell us what we've got. And that really is every business, isn't it, right? Is you've got to look at it from what is it from a data point of view? What is the world doing that affect, does anybody want what we do, what they're prepared to pay? Is it in demand? Is it not in demand? And then who are the people that we've got and what do we do with them? And that's it for everything. It doesn't matter if you're a window cleaner or you're NVIDIA. It's just a different scale, right? It's the same problem. And I think our business had the middle bit of that bob on. DRB was a definite thing that everybody needed. It was absolutely brilliant, but nobody loved it. And that's the honest answer, right? Like any relationship, if the people in the business, a lot of them hated it. They were just there to turn up to start fires. A lot of the customers couldn't stand us, and the supply chain the same until we went. And once we'd gone, everybody realised what they'd lost. Just like any relationship, you're in your marriage, you think you could do better, you're bored, you both stop trying, whatever. The relationship dies, and then on the other side of it, you all think. The difference with me is, I knew what I'd got, and I don't think there will ever be a day, because it's 3 years in February. I don't think there'll ever be a day where I'm not devastated that I couldn't have done it. I don't think it'll ever leave me. I think it will haunt me forever. And there's an upside to that, because I use that energy to fuel me, because I still have dark days, right? I'm building from nothing, and I'm trying to get back up there and tell people what I do and how I do it and how I can help, and starting from zero again at, I'm 48 next week, so I'm not a young man, but I'm a wiser one now. And you have to use that fuel. That's the only solution, isn't it? You've got to get up, you've got to get dressed, you've got to get the kids to school and clean the house and get out there and network and meet enough people so that somebody somewhere will hear the story and think, God, I might just give him a ring and get him to come and have a look. Why wouldn't you?
We said it almost every day in the army, what don't kill you makes you stronger. And it's a case of being able to acknowledge that, for every time that we knock down, there's a lesson within it that we have to be willing to address and learn from in order that we don't continue. It's almost a case of I'm willing to be knocked down repeatedly, just not by the same damn thing. And if I can learn from this time to be knocked over by something else next time, then so be it. And if I can help somebody else to not trip over the same thing that I tripped on, but on something else later down the line, then so be it.
I think my one thing I think that sets me apart from everybody that I tend to bump into, or puts me in a smaller pool. You're never unique, are you? But what puts me in a smaller pool is I am much more comfortable being uncomfortable than the average bear. And that's been driving across the Sahara, ultra marathons, high altitude mountaineering, running a business, doing the MBA. I'm not an academic. I found that incredibly hard, but I'm good with hard. I'm all right with that. I don't
learn to become comfortable at being uncomfortable.
You just have to be, don't you? Like, that's it. You've got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. You're cold, wet, hungry, whatever it is. You're stressed. It's that great Navy SEAL line from that. That is it. Jocko, it's the guy that
Jocko Willink.
Yeah, the guy's amazing. That what a great line when someone's just in your office telling you that everything's broken and everything's gone and everyone's dead and the world's over, and you go, "Good. Now what?"
Amen.
And it's perfect, isn't it? You just great. We can't change that. What can we deal with? How do we do it now? How do we get moving quick? And I've just learned so much over the last 10 years, and the thing that gets me up in the morning is that the idea of pulling all of that together, the academic, the experience, and the wisdom of age, really shoving it all together, and using that to get to businesses and to really help to be the consultant that I never had, that just wasn't out there in the marketplace that I could find, and to just be front and center when somebody thinks, oh, I wonder what it's like. I'm a father trying to hand over to a son. I wonder if there's someone out there that knows what that feels like and how to support both parties, and all of that. And SMEs are unloved. It's not until you get to a certain size that the big four come knocking on your door. Prior to that, there's not a lot around there looking to help, and that's where I want to be.
Matt, it's been an absolute pleasure and privilege to be able to unveil some of some of your past and to be able to dig under the surface and such. If you're an accidental business owner feeling the weight of responsibility right now, I trust me, take the times to be able to listen to the insights that Matt shared with us today, and spoken truly, honestly, quite raw at times from the heart, about being able to watch for the warning signs early, be willing to act early, and cut deep if necessary to do so, and don't subsequently trying to just carve out the little bit, but understand the longer term impact of not doing so, and never underestimate the human impact on the decisions. To understand that we've got to look after this first, because we're coming into it already knackered and burnt out, than the decisions that perhaps we're making would otherwise be. We could look back on and challenge and determine better decisions could have been made. And likewise, to be able to reach out to somebody like Matt, who's gone through that from a experiential point of view, and then brought in the academia, to be able to understand that you don't have to fight this alone. For more conversations like this, don't forget to subscribe, if you haven't already done so, to the Accidentally Successful Business Owner podcast. And if you do so, please share this particular episode with somebody in your own network who you think ought to hear it today. Matt, sincerely thanks for your time, my friend. It's been a real pleasure.
Thanks, Jay. Appreciate the time. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Accidental Business Owner podcast with me, Jay Allen. If today's episode sparked a thought, challenged your thinking, or gave you a new tool to grow smarter, share it, rate it, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a moment of transformation. God bless, take care, and I'll see you again next week.